Hi there, welcome back to my channel. My name is Sadie and I'm the Prime Minister of Behavior. Today I'm going to be analyzing Christopher Dontell, the man who had an affair with Meagan Jackson. He pleaded guilty to accessory after the fact and conspiracy in the death of Gregory Rice, the father of Jackson's children. Today we're going to find out whether or not he's telling the truth. So the first impression we have of this man, he walks into the room and this is a really short clip, but I just really wanted to point out exactly how he's walking out into the room. He's got his chin held up high. He looks like he's quite proud walking out, but he doesn't look fearful. And I want to point this out. There's a reason why I'm pointing this out first and foremost. He doesn't look timid. He doesn't look scared. He doesn't look intimidated. He just looks like he's just walking in. There's nothing to be afraid of. There's no fear whatsoever. It kind of makes me think of when a wrestler is walking out into a stadium about to have a brawl of some kind. Like, he really just has a lot of confidence when he walks out. And I thought that that was very interesting considering what he's about to say.
Obviously, you were in custody at this time, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
How long have you been in custody?
Since September 9th of 2021.
When were you arrested in this case?
I was arrested November 11th of 2020.
So I thought this clip was interesting because it's showing his baseline for typical questions. It's the easy questions right now. He searches up into the left. He starts at the left and then the right to find his answer. So we know that that's how he gets information.
The bond got revoked for contact with my co-defendant.
He leans in to make sure that that fact is pointed out. That's a really important thing that he wants to get across. However, I also find it very interesting for in the case in general because he was out on bond and so was she, and they were both put back in prison because they were together. So remember this fact when we're going forward for what he's about to say, because he's going to tell us that it's a whole different situation.
Was your case called for trial in December of last year?
Yes, ma'am.
What happened when it was called for trial?
When it was called for trial, I pled to accessory after the fact and conspiracy.
Had you had any conversations with me or any other?
So I thought this was an interesting expression, and I think it shows a common expression that he has on his face a lot. He seems like he has a very, like a scowl. You can see his eyebrows right in between them. There's the two lines. It's etching on the face because this is a common expression that he tends to make. And this current expression, he's showing confusion because the lawyer is asking him about whether or not they've spoken previously about anything, just to make sure that he's okay to be talking to. But I just thought that was a really interesting expression because you can just see that that's a common thing that his eyebrows do. And you see that throughout this entire time.
Had you had any conversations with me or any other representative of the state about that plea?
So again, with the confusion, you can see that he's just contemplating and very confused at first. And then he realizes what she's talking about. And then he thinks, oh, and then that's where he accesses, once again, he accesses memory right there. And then he has the response.
No.
What are you hoping to get from testifying today if there are no agreements between the state and you?
Personally, I'm hoping to get obviously less time.
He leans forward and he says, obviously, less time. Just a slight lean forward right there. And then the waterworks begin.
I'm also hoping to provide closure for the Rice family.
Were you
You can see him looking down to get in character. Greg Hartley always calls this going down the well. It's when somebody just makes themselves so upset, just finding any reason to get upset so that they pull the emotion out of nowhere or wherever and makes it so they can't communicate with whoever is trying to communicate with them. I want you to pay attention to when he's sad and when he's not sad. And how long does his sadness last? I also do want to point out that there is a point where he does look sad, but this is not it.
I'm also hoping to provide closure for the Rice family.
I think in reality, the main thing that he said first is the reason why he's doing that, is that he wants a shortened amount of time. I don't think it really has anything to do with wanting closure for the Rice family, unfortunately. I just don't believe what he's saying, especially after he gets emotional about it. I'm not buying it.
Were you... I'm going to sort of jump around just a little bit, because I'm going to go to
He does a
after
self-soothing adapter
the murder.
in his pocket while she's talking.
I had a family, a house, I had a career, I had a good life, and I'm trying to protect it. I'd also been frightened by my co-defendant. But if I ever told the truth, she'd kill me.
Now, there's a reason why I brought up him walking into the room in the first place. Right now, he's claiming that he was threatened. He is trying to show a lot of emotions with that. Yet when he first walked into the room, he showed a completely different behavior. He was confident and he didn't look afraid at all. He didn't look emotional at all. You'd think that when somebody first walked into a room where there was somebody who threatened them, that they would be at least a little affected by that person, because they would remember feeling scared or they would remember feeling threatened. However, we don't see that at all in him, and I think this is just an example of him having emotional mismatch. He's saying one thing, and yet his behavior is showing a completely different thing. We want to look at the big picture instead of just the one moment that he is talking about. I think that that's a really important thing to note.
You said one of the reasons is that you were trying to protect the house. You had a nice house and a family. Does your family still live in that house?
No.
I want to quickly show a video of Savannah, the victim's daughter in this, who's also a victim herself. When you are talking about somebody who's being very emotional and very upset about a situation, the sadness doesn't just come and go. It stays. It's always there. It's always lingering, and it ramps up and it goes down a bit, but there's still always signs of sadness. But with this man, there is no sadness until the moment that he wants the sadness to be there. It goes and it goes, and all of a sudden he's emotional, and then it goes and it goes. That's not normal. That's not normal behavior. He's not being believable.
And some people might think it odd that a man is afraid of a fairly petite woman. Why were you afraid of her?
I feel like this lawyer is slightly condescending when she's talking to him.
I was afraid of her because I watched her kill the father of a kid. And threatened to do the same thing to me.
All right. So now,
Once again, he's trying to access that emotional side of himself. And he does generate some tears.
all right. So now, how did you come to meet the defendant?
So, I believe it was early 2018.
He just sniffs once and then he's done with crying. There's no more emotion. His voice goes back to normal. His cadence goes right back to normal, how it was before. He's right back to the baseline. However, he still has tears on his face. You can see it on the sides of his face. He's not wiping them off so that everybody can see that he's been crying. More and more throughout this, he gets a very dry mouth. This happens when you are stressed out.
When you first began working with her, did you introduce her to your family?
I wouldn't say it was when I first went to work with her, but
That vocal click that he just made is out of baseline from what is usual when he's answering a question. So it's not that he's being deceptive or he's telling the truth necessarily. It's just that it's out of his baseline. Why is he answering the question like that? Why does he have to make that sound? Why is he adapting so much with his mouth? What is happening? Obviously, he, like I mentioned before, his mouth is dry. He's very stressed out right now. But is that because he's lying? Because that's very stressful when you lie.
I believe the first time she met my family was when we were living in a condo off of 38th Avenue in Myrtle Beach, and my wife was pregnant at the time, and we were moving into our new house in Conway, so I was having to box things up and lift the weight on my own because my wife couldn't lift because she was pregnant. And I just happened to be talking about it on one of our death calls one day that I had a lot of work to get done. I was having to box things up. I didn't have much help. And the defendant volunteered to help me lift the boxes and move them downstairs and things like that. So I took her up on that offer, and she came to the condo and helped, and she met my wife.
He seems very happy about taking her up on that offer. I would say we've got a micro expression of happiness, but it doesn't really seem like a micro expression. It's more of just a huge expression of happiness, which is not something that I would have expected, seeing him talking about introducing his wife to the woman that he had an affair with. Then all of a sudden his smile drops when he says she met my wife, and we see a swallow and a lip compression with the downturned mouth.
At some point, did you and the defendant begin a sexual relationship?
Yes.
How did that begin?
Well, it began...
Once again, we hear that verbal click when he starts the response.
There was a time I invited her to lunch at a restaurant called Bricks in Myrtle Beach. She came to lunch with me.
It looks like he is trying to suppress a smile. It took me a while. I thought that I wasn't sure. I was going in between contempt and a smile, because contempt is one side of the face. One side of the face, you can see it going up right there. You can see it. But then I wasn't sure about the other side of the face. But the more I look at it and go back and forth, it does look like he's concealing a smile. He's trying to conceal a smile. And he's talking about going to lunch with her for the first time, back when this whole thing began. So of course he's trying to suppress a smile, because he has joyous memories of this.
She came to lunch with me, and she ordered several drinks.
He does a confirmation glance after he's talking about the several drinks that she ordered. This confirmation glance is making sure that they are buying his story. She ordered several drinks. He obviously wants that to be a main thing that people focus on. We have to pay attention to when he leans forward and what messages he wants us to remember.
It was the first time I'd seen her drink. She ordered a bunch of amaretto sours and got hammered drunk. After that, and let me backtrack, I was a regular at Bricks. I went there a lot. I went there with my family. I went there after leaving the hospital from autopsies for lunch. I was a regular there. So after the initial time that the defendant met me there, I continued to go there on my own, and I started seeing her there. I would run into her there. She would already be there, and she would typically be drinking by herself. And she started becoming a regular there herself, more so than I was.
I find it interesting that he's really pointing out the fact that, oh, she was there without me. I would show up there and she would already be there. I'm sure that they made plans all the time about going there and meeting up there. And it just makes me feel like that's not true at all. the way that he's making it out to be. Oh, it was all her.
This was before your sexual relationship began?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm getting
No,
next.
no, you're fine. I'm just trying to make sure we keep the timeline correct.
I got you.
I want to point out as well what his face looks like when he's smiling. So we know
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm getting
that micro expression that we were pointing out earlier is 100% he was concealing a smile.
So then on one of these occasions at Bricks, it was at night, she paid her bill and she told me that she had to talk to me outside privately. So I went outside with her and she told me to get in the van, her work van. So I got in the passenger seat thinking she was going to ask me a question about work or something like that. And she turned the van on and threw it in reverse. I said, "Where are we going?" She said, "We can't talk right here." It was right by the entrance and there were people around. So in the back parking lot of Bricks, it's kind of an incline in the parking lot and it goes up to a service road, like a dead end service road. And she pulled into the service road and parked. And I said, "This looks suspicious, why are we here?" She said, "Have you ever cheated on your wife?" I said, "No." She said, "Well, you're about to."
First of all, there is absolutely no way that he just thought they were going to talk about work. There's no way that would be... They're in the bar drinking, and then they go into the vehicle. There's no way that a man will be like, "Yup, we're going to go talk about work." This, I feel like, is such a fake story. This whole thing is so fake, and then he gets emotional on top of that to make it seem like he is the victim. He's the one that got mixed up with all of this.
An incline in the parking lot, and it goes up to a service road, like a dead end service road. And she pulled into the service road.
And he's giving so much detail about where he was and where she was and where the vehicle went, and she pulled out here and went there, and it's useless information that is not required. When the question was, how did that sexual relationship begin? This is just a huge tangent to go somewhere else. But to make him still seem like he's the victim.
And I said, "This looks suspicious, why are we here?"
Even the eyes, his eyes coming out like this.
"This looks suspicious, why are we here?"
This looks suspicious, why are we here? That's the look of somebody who's not afraid of getting caught. He looks like he's enjoying the thought of being in this situation. And then all of a sudden his face just drops again. He is enjoying reliving this experience. He remembers this experience. He didn't push her off of him. There's no way. He's loving this. Watch his expression. Watch his expression change from happiness because this is a kid in a candy store right now to serious. And then all of a sudden, sadness. His emotions are everywhere. I said, "No."
I said, "No." She said, "Well, you're about to."
That's not how it went down at all.
For the next several days, she kind of made fun of me about it and told me that...
I feel like he's saying it as an aside in a way, but the way that he's saying it, it's as if he's getting teased and he likes it. He is more happy retelling this than sad. You can see it in his face. His expressions are happy, not of sadness like he's trying to portray. And he's obviously forgotten that he wants to portray sadness. This is not a sad man. This is not a man who is a victim. This is not a man who is upset about the situation with this woman. This is a man who's acting like he is upset. Because when he remembers to go expressionless, he goes expressionless.
Kind of made fun of me about it and told me that I was the only guy she's ever met that would have turned down that opportunity. And eventually I didn't push her off of me. I gave in, and that's when it all started. And it became a regular event.
That is what we call fading facts with a lip compression and a blink rate surge and a deep swallow. That would be known as a cluster.
Do you know about when the affair started?
No, this reaction is hilarious because obviously this is a question that he did not want to have.
It would have been very late 2019, very early 2020.
This answer about when the relationship started is the biggest deviation from baseline that we've seen so far. He has a deep breath in as he posturally shifts and retreats. He shakes his head no, and he has eye contact avoidance. While he does that, he doesn't give a clear answer, and when he does, he uses uptalk, like it's a question.
Very late 2019, very early 2020.
And as he answers, he also adapts with his mouth. With all that being said, I do not believe that this relationship started when he says it did. I believe this is deceptive.
Did you two go to, and I'm just calling it Preserve because the name's too long, the Preserve on International Drive?
We did, yes.
What was the purpose of going there?
Shooting,
Had you done that before?
yes, many times.
Did you, when you would go shooting, who was shooting? Was it you, was it her, or was it a combination?
If I might backtrack a little bit,
Absolutely.
prior to all of this, I would say total throughout the duration of time that, from the time I met the defendant until all of this transpired, we probably went shooting 12 to 15 times. Sometimes it was at the Heritage Preserve, sometimes it was in the woods off of Water Tower Road. I know she shot more frequently than I did, but she often asked me to go with her, and sometimes I did. Sometimes I went and didn't shoot, and she shot. Sometimes I did shoot.
I find it very interesting that he inserts the fact that just like the bar, it's now happening again where she's become a regular. She's doing this. He has no part of it. He doesn't even shoot the guns. He's hardly even there. She always is there. She's drinking at the bar and she's going to the gun range and she's doing this and doing that. He's very much spacing himself away from this woman, the defendant. So it's very interesting because he's really trying to make it seem like it's all her when in fact it was both of them. They were both there together. You go to a shooting range, well, regardless, you're still going there together. And I find it very telling that he interrupts to backtrack so that he remembers to mention that it was never him. He was the innocent party in all of this, even though he's already admitted to what he's done, what he did.
Did you know where Greg lived before this?
I knew where his apartment complex was. I'd been there on death calls before, so I knew roughly, I forget what it was called now, but I knew how to get to the general area.
Instead of answering a yes or no question, he says, I knew how to get to the general area. He also nods as he's saying this, and he does a tongue jut and then also lip compression on top of it. So he doesn't like what he's saying, and he's concealing even more. This is a cluster of behavior that I just couldn't ignore.
I saw Greg on the left side of the road walking towards us, just outside of the apartment complex. And I said, "Is that him?" She said, "Yeah." So as we approached him, I started to slow down, and she said, make a U-turn. So I kind of passed him, made a U-turn, and as I pulled up alongside him, she said, because he stopped walking, and he kind of turned to face our van, and I was stopping right next to him, and she said, pull up, don't be awkward. So I said, pull up. She said, yeah, pull up. So I pulled up so that we had passed him.
This whole telling of the very moment where everything changed. This is a huge moment to be talking about. He makes sure to point out that she was the one that was in control of everything. He had no idea what was going on. He was just going with what she was saying. I mean, I just have a hard time believing that he had no idea what her plan was. And I also want to go back to the start of how he walked into the room looking rough and ready to fight. It really seemed like he had a very authoritative walk in, and it just makes me think that the type of person that he is, he wouldn't be the one to take a back seat. He would be a part of this plan. I wholeheartedly believe that he knew what was going on.
She opened the door and shot him.
How many shots did you hear?
A lot.
What did you do?
I froze.
Did the defendant say anything to you at that point?
Yeah. She said, what are you doing? Help me, help me. Cursing at me, help me.
So what did you do?
I got out of the van and walked toward the back of the van. Greg was laying right at the back of the van on the side of the road.
We know that he is able to show emotions. We know that his forehead is very expressive. Yet here, where we would expect to have the most emotions showing up, because again, this is the moment that changed everything. There's nothing showing any recall of emotion, which is very interesting. It's crazy too, because when I first saw this, I thought nothing of it, and now just rewatching this, there's so much there. There's so much there because there's so much missing.
And then in her van, she had what we call I don't remember what we called it, like a sliding board. It was a black plastic backboard, and it was flexible so that you could put a body on it and easily slide it and maneuver it around. I pulled that off of her stretcher, and using the sheet as leverage, we both picked Greg up and put him on the sliding board and put him into the back of the van.
What did you do next?
Just pausing the story for effect, and I do think that it's just for the effect. It's not because he's feeling emotional. It doesn't seem like he's feeling emotional. Again, we go back to his face. It's completely blank. There's no emotions. He's slowing down his speech, but it just seems that it's more for the effect as opposed to the emotions that are taking over. There's no emotions that are taking over. You can see by his face.
By the time when I pulled up in front of him, it was like one swift move. Like she opened the door, slid out, and it was pop, 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 pop.
So we see a nostril flare, which means that his breathing rate has increased rapidly, but this makes sense with the story he's telling. This is emotional recall. This is what we should have seen this whole time. He's retelling an emotional, traumatic experience, and his body is reacting to the story that he's telling. This is what we would expect. Where was this before, though? That's what I'm wondering.
Slid out, and it was pop, 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 pop.
Once again, he remembers to get upset and starts becoming emotional. And then the next question is asked, and he sits upright and is back to talking normally.
So you said that you hightailed it out of the Arrowhead community. Where did you go?
We went back to the funeral home.
What happened when you got there?
Well, first of all, on the way there, I asked her, what just happened? Why did you do that?
This is interesting because instead of answering the question about what happened at the funeral home, he makes sure to make it known that he asked, what happened? Why did you do that? It seems very unrealistic that the conversation went the way that he says it did after the fact, because obviously he knows what happened. So why would he ask what just happened? Why would he ask, why did you do that? It's very clear that he, again, wants to distance himself from the crime that just occurred. But why would he feel the need to tell us that he asked her what just happened? That doesn't make any sense. It's also interesting that he fills in that part. He needs to go back to put that part in.
We went back to the funeral home.
What happened when you got there?
Well, first of all, on the way there, I asked her, what just happened? Why did you do that?
It's clear to me that he seems to have some phrases that he really wants to insert to make him appear more innocent in all of this, so that it makes her out to be the mastermind. He was just along for the ride, even though he was the one who was driving. He was just there. He didn't know what was happening. He had no part of anything evil, except he did.
She didn't say much. She told me to go to the funeral home. And I just remember the complete nonchalance.
Now we do see an emotion that I haven't actually seen yet before with him, and it seems like it does appear to be sorrow. I could be completely wrong, but he's got his eyebrows turned up, and this expression, the wrinkles right here on his forehead. This is the only moment so far that we've actually seen true emotion, and this is an emotion that we should be seeing this entire time. So, I mean, it could be true. It could be him actually recalling truthful information about how he felt after the fact, which is fair because, I mean, even if you are guilty of doing something, it doesn't mean that you feel good about it. It doesn't mean that you don't feel badly that something happened in that way. And it could have been a wake-up call for who she actually is. But, again, it doesn't mean that he's innocent. Well, we know that he's not innocent.
It was like a minor inconvenience that we were going through.
Do you remember the emotion that we just saw on his forehead? Now it's gone.
So what happened once you got back to the funeral home?
Pay attention to when that emotion that we see up here comes back, because remember the eyebrows went up and he had sorrow on his face. That only comes once in a while. When we don't see that, we know that it's not a true emotion.
So what happened once you got back to the funeral home?
So at the funeral home, when you bring a body in,
He's acting like he's trying to calm himself down, but he wasn't feeling, it wasn't a truthful emotion. He was not breathing heavily, but he's going, and he's not, there's no indicators of him being out of breath. It's so unbelievable.
at the funeral home, when you bring a body in,
Again, he's acting like this is so hard for him to talk about, yet this is something that he's used to on a regular basis. I mean, he was the coroner. This is something that is more common for him than anything.
During this time that you're taking Greg out of the van and loading him into the cooler, were you able to see him? Was there a lot of blood?
so the night that we put him in,
Yes, the night he was killed.
I did not look.
This is interesting because he sidesteps right past the main question and says that he didn't even look at him, which is so unrealistic. And he also asks a question. Instead of answering the question, he asks another question to confirm what she's talking about. And he, in the process, avoids saying what actually happened.
So the night that we put him in.
Yes, the night he was killed.
Now, this is severity softening. He's doing everything he possibly can to avoid saying what actually happened. He's trying everything he can not to say the night that we killed him.
The night that we put him in.
Yes, the night he was killed.
And I love that the lawyer said, yes, the night that he was killed, when he tries to sidestep what actually happened.
Got out of there fast and went back to her house.
Did you go back to...
I'm sorry.
Go
Yeah.
ahead.
On the way back to her house, we had to get my Explorer from Abuelo's. So we stopped to get my Explorer before we went back to her house. On the way to get the Explorer, she told me that if I ever told anybody what happened, she would kill me. And that we had to be in this together.
He had to sneak that line in there just to make sure that everybody knows that he's innocent in all of this. I feel like this is a good example of perception management. He is really trying to sell the fact that it was all her. She was the mastermind and he was, again, just an innocent bystander.
Meagan went straight to the shower.
This is an interesting moment because this is the first time, or one of the first times, that he actually uses the name Meagan as opposed to the defendant. So he actually uses her name in the sentence, Meagan went and had a shower.
And I sat on the couch with Savannah.
Now he's talking about sitting on the couch with Savannah, and he goes once more down the well and gets emotional.
I'm sorry, Savannah.
Okay, you just have to answer my question.
I'm sorry. Sat on the couch with her. And I tried to make small talk. Like I hadn't just watched her mother kill her father.
Now watch his expression. Yes, he does have tears. There are tears there. But there's nothing in the forehead.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
This was him actually feeling some form of sorrow. This is him now, not feeling any, when he's apologizing to the daughter of the victim. Now let's just keep watching to see if we do end up seeing that expression.
I'm sorry, Savannah.
Okay, you just have to answer my question.
I'm sorry. Sat on the couch with her. And I tried to make small talk. Like I hadn't just watched her mother kill her father.
Once again, we see a tear fall from the side of his face. And I do think that once more, this is him showcasing that he is crying, so that is enough. Now I think is a really interesting moment because it goes to the courtroom and you can see the emotions on people's faces. Specifically, there's a man with glasses who has a very sad look on his face because just 2 seats down is Savannah, and she's heartbroken from what is happening, what is being talked about, because she's remembering everything that she lives through. My goodness, I feel so bad for Savannah. Even Savannah's friend, who's right beside her, is so emotional and feeling so wrecked because of what is being talked about. And it's not because they're feeling empathetic towards Chris. It's because Savannah is remembering all of this and having to relive all this. And I feel way more empathy when looking at the courtroom than I do looking at him.
when I heard her say, do this or do that, or I'm going to kill you.
To start off, he changes tenses immediately. He goes, when I hear her say, and then when I heard her say. So back and forth a little bit there, which is interesting. Then he talks about the threat, and he once more goes down the well and gets emotional.
I had just watched her kill the father of her kids, and I'm going to take it serious.
So did you, in fact, dispose of Greg's body?
He has a change of cadence, but then gets interrupted, and it goes back to normal. What is also interesting about his face when he is crying or feeling emotional, he is interrupted midway through his emotional outburst, if you want to call it that, his emotional moment. And it goes back to normal once he answers the next question. Now, I thought it was really important to mention a quote that Scott Rouse says on the behavior panel, where fake won't stick. If you have a true emotion, it lasts. It doesn't just disappear.
I did. So I went to Lowe's, and I honestly, at the time, had no idea what I was going to do with the body, or if I was even going to do what she wanted me to do.
I also find it very interesting that he says, I honestly, at the time. This is a qualifier. This is not something that needs to be said. The fact that he says, I honestly, at the time, makes it feel like he is not being honest in this. He didn't, at the time, question whether or not he was going to help her, because he was already helping her.
When I was there shopping at Lowe's, I didn't know where I was taking him. I didn't know if I was going to go to the water or to the woods or somewhere else.
This is just perception management. He's just, once more, trying to make him out to be a victim in all of this as well.
I just started buying things that I thought might be useful.
He didn't have to go to Lowe's. He didn't have to buy the supplies. He didn't have to go through with this whatsoever. It was his choice to do it.
Did you go back to the funeral home to get Greg's body?
Yes.
Another thing that he does when he is emotional is he goes as if he's breathing heavily, but you don't see him breathing heavily like that. Going back to Savannah, where she was having an anxiety attack on the stand, you knew that she was having an anxiety attack on the stand. You could see her breathing rate go crazy. You knew that she was struggling to breathe. But when you see him, you don't see that.
While we were on the death call, she told me that she was having a miscarriage, actively.
I noticed that he pauses for the effect after mentioning the miscarriage actively, just to make sure that everybody's understanding what he's saying.
And the defendant got out of her van and walked straight into the bathroom of the coroner's office and was in there for, I estimate, 20 to 30 minutes. I handled the body. I took care of what needed to be done. Eventually she came out of the bathroom and she told me, again, so nonchalantly.
It's interesting too that she's telling him so nonchalantly, like she doesn't care that this is what she's going through. But he has to make that point that she's nonchalant.
Well, I'm having a miscarriage, so things are really working out for you. Greg's dead and I'm having a miscarriage. And she told me that I better get rid of that body tonight. Meaning Greg's body.
After pausing, saying that, getting rid of that body, he corrects and says, Greg's body.
Meaning Greg's body.
So at some point, did you go back to the funeral?
He has an expression for a brief moment of true grief or sadness before it cuts away. In my opinion, I feel like she may not have been pregnant. It may not actually been a true pregnancy, but he certainly believed that she was. In this moment, it tells me that he feels awful about that. We see this tense up in the middle of his forehead, and we see his eyebrows shooting up, and we see that wrinkle that we had seen previously when he was feeling emotional. I feel like he truly believed that she was pregnant and felt badly. This is one of the only times, we've only seen twice now where we've seen that wrinkle on his forehead, and both times looked like it was true sorrow, true grief, true sadness on his face. Any other time that he has been crying, no, I'm sorry, it's just not there. I don't buy it.
So I went to the funeral home, and I took my Explorer, and I put him in my Explorer.
When did you transport him in?
So I had grabbed a portable stretcher. I believe I got it out of her van. It was either out of the van or it was out of the funeral home itself. But they have these fold-up stretchers. They fold out and they look like a big, heavy-duty backboard. I took him out of the cooler. I put him on that.
So once again, we see multiple verbal clicks coming from him. He's obviously, like I mentioned before, his mouth is dry. This man needs water. And we also see lip compressions. And it honestly, again, it just looks like he's going to eat his lips. Like it's such a bizarre expression that we see. In the middle of this, he also adjusts himself, and we notice that a lot of this time he hasn't really been sitting upright. He's been kind of turtling more and more and sitting more and more concave. So he's trying to protect his soft white underbelly here.
I believe I got it out of her van. It was either out of the van or it was out of the funeral home itself. But they have these fold-up stretchers. They fold out and they look like a big, heavy-duty backboard.
He seems very happy to be talking about something that isn't about the body. He's just happy to go on a tangent a little bit about something else so that he can just put words out there. So it seems like he's giving a lot of information about that day when in reality he's not giving the information that he should be giving.
I took him out of the cooler. I put him on that.
And once again, he does a lip compression at the end of this with a very hard swallow, which is understandable because he's talking about a subject that is absolutely terrible.
While I was on 501, I just didn't want to be doing this. And all I could think about was, how can I get out of this?
He's saying that he did not want to be doing this, that he wished that he wasn't in this situation, etc., etc. Now, he's saying that while he's not even with her, and he has no thought at this point to go to the police.
I felt like there was no good decision I could make. I called the police. She's going to kill me.
But the logic there makes no sense, because how would she kill him if she was already arrested? If he went to the police, she wouldn't have been able to kill him.
I pulled over into a parking lot, and I sat there for a few minutes. It was just a business. It was late at night, so it was an empty parking lot. Just trying to think of how can I get out of this. And eventually I came to the realization that I wasn't getting out of it, and I just had to finish what I was doing.
This information about the parking lot is very strange, because why would he need to fill that information in? Why would you need to I went to a parking lot and sat there for half an hour contemplating what to do. Okay, but it doesn't fit with the story. Did you? Does that mean anything for the story? Did it mean that you are innocent because you sat there for half an hour and did nothing and contemplated? It doesn't mean anything. Once more, it's only for the sake of perception management. He just wants everybody to know that he is a victim in all this.
Looked at the map on my phone at the river at the county line, and I decided to head out 378. So I drove out 378, and there wasn't much traffic, but as I got close to the county line, there was a car that had flown up behind me, and I pulled into a little convenience store about a mile or so before the county line, and I let that car pass.
It's very interesting that he's going in such detail about him sitting there and waiting and contemplating, and then all of a sudden there's a car behind him and he pulled over. I mean, all this information, it's not really important in this. He's supposed to be answering the question about what happened that night when he disposed of the body. And yet here he is just trailing off, again, talking for the sake of saying words rather than have it be information. It's not the information that was asked for. It's not the information that we want, but it's the information that he feels is important to give so that people see him as an innocent party once more.
I made sure that there was no oncoming cars so that nobody was going to pull up on me while I was doing what I was doing.
This is him psychologically distancing from what he was doing. What was he doing? That's the important factor here. He's not talking about what he was doing. He's also doing fading facts, which is he's going very quiet at the end. We've seen this multiple times with him already.
I went back to the middle of the bridge and I popped the back gate of the Explorer. Took about 10 seconds to put him in the water.
When he's saying all of this, he's not giving a single illustrator whatsoever. I find that very interesting. He says all of this once more with no emotion, once more with no extreme expressions on his face. It's just a very interesting look of cold.
Went back to the defendant's house.
Was there any conversation at that point about getting rid of, had you done that?
I came in and she smiled at me and said, "Did you do what you needed to do? What you needed to do?"
Now remember, we did see the true sadness appear. We've seen it twice now.
I said yes, and she said, "Good boy."
Let me just back up on something.
I don't know if it's just me, but I have a really hard time buying any of this emotion. I just don't buy it. And it seems that we're getting a bit of a confirmation glance right after. He pops his eyes open to see if the story is being bought. And then again, we see a lip compression. Oh man, he's just trying so hard.
Do you know what happened to the gun the defendant used?
I feel like that there was a confirmation glance throughout the whole courtroom to see if people are believing his story.
Let me just back up on something. Do you know what happened to the gun the defendant used?
He sniffs as if he's just so emotional and he's unable to contain himself. And that's what that expression was before, I think, is just like him just really trying so hard to go through the motions of crying or being emotional, yet not having the right things. Just having a lot of missing elements.
At some point, did you decide to tell the truth about what happened?
I did.
And what spurred that decision?
So once again, we see a brief moment of sadness show up on his face when she asks him about telling the truth.
I did.
It's so minor and it's so brief, and I do feel like it's because he feels bad about doing this. Because going back to him being happy that she was teasing him or suppressing the smiles that we saw earlier when he was talking about her drinking at the bar and being at the bar with him and all that, when the relationship first began. I believe that he genuinely feels badly about telling the truth, which is why we're seeing this expression.
What made you decide to tell the truth?
Well, the first conversation I had with my lawyer, I told her what I was guilty of, and I said, I will plead to that now and I'll tell the whole truth.
It's interesting that he uses the words, I will tell the whole truth, instead of saying, I will tell the truth. It makes it once more seem like it's a product that he's selling. It's just a very weird way of saying it when I will tell you the truth. I will tell you the whole truth. It's once more, it's a qualifying statement that he's using, and it just does not seem that it is believable. We already know that he's lied. He has lied multiple times, not just now while being on the stand. He has lied to his wife, the woman that he's supposed to be legally wed to. He has lied to police. He's lied to lawyers. He's a liar. When I hear him say, I will tell you the whole truth, it makes me feel like he will not tell me the whole truth. He will not tell me anything that's true.
But I want my family to be protected, because as soon as it came out that I was talking and actually telling the truth and not the story.
And once more, right after that, we hear another qualifying statement. Right after that, he says, I was actually telling the truth.
I didn't know what she would do. She would hurt my family.
And again, we see him trying to gain that emotional disconnect. I don't know. I didn't know what she would do to my family. It seems that he just kind of stumbles over that and gets that out. And it's just very interesting, because where was this concern before? Where was the concern for his family when the affair initially began? That's my question.
My understanding of it was that if the defendant, who was on home detention at the time on an ankle monitor, were to enter into these areas anywhere near my family, the police would be dispatched immediately. That was the point where I was somewhat comfortable telling the truth.
So he's saying that he lied before, but now he's telling the truth, and that we should believe him in everything. Yet there's so many things that he's done that just makes me question everything. There's no fear behind his expression when he's talking about his family. It doesn't feel like it's legitimate in a lot of ways, that he's suddenly concerned about his family, when this whole experience, this whole time, he hasn't shown any concern for his family. Well, after analyzing the body language and behavior of Chris Dontell, I don't buy his story. I don't think that he was innocent. I mean, he's obviously not innocent. He pled guilty. I think that he's saying he was not involved in a lot of things, and that it was mostly her that did everything, but I don't believe that. I think that they were both guilty, just as guilty. I think that they both knew what was going on. I feel like he's manipulative. I feel like he is a scumbag for cheating on his wife. I feel like he's not concerned about his family. I think he's more concerned about himself, and not. I think that the first response was exactly what he's here for. It's he wants less time, but I don't think he should get less time. I think that he's just as guilty as she is. I think that 20 years is more than enough time. I feel like maybe he should have more time in jail. What did you see? If there's anything I missed or anything that you noticed, please let me know in the comments below. I'd really love to discuss this further. I think that this was really interesting. I think that there's a lot of things missing, and I think that that's really important. Please hit that like and subscribe, and I will see you on the next one.